What if I told you that Mercedes could be dominating Formula One with something that the FIA is already investigating, and that could disappear at any moment? Because what they have discovered in the W17 is not a simple improvement, it is a trick in recharging energy that has even left George Russell completely shocked. And now the big question is, are we facing a masterpiece within the regulations, or before the next big controversy that can change the entire season? In a matter of weeks, Mercedes has gone from being a solid contender to becoming the center of attention within the paddock, but not only because of its results, but because of the way in which it is achieving them. The W17 has shown a performance that, although at first glance it seems simply superior, hides a technical complexity that is generating discomfort even within the team itself. Because we are not talking about a visible aerodynamic improvement or a logical evolution of the engine, but about something much more difficult to detect. Energy management that breaks with everything we thought we understood until now in Formula One. From the first races of the season, especially after what was seen in circuits like Australia and China, strange patterns began to appear in the data. They were not huge differences in times by sector, but something more subtle and at the same time more worrying for rivals. Mercedes was not only fast, it was consistent in areas where other cars seemed to run out of resources. And this immediately caught our attention, because in an era where the electrical component has an increasingly greater weight, any anomaly in that section can make decisive differences in each lap. What started as simple suspicions quickly turned into deeper analyses. Rival teams began to review public telemetry, speed comparisons, and straight-line behavior, and they all agreed on the same thing. The W17 did something different. It wasn't just that it accelerated better, but that it always seemed to have something else in store, as if its battery never ran out at critical moments. And that, in a system where energy is strictly limited, should not be possible. At least not in the way they were showing it. This is where the concept that has sparked all the controversy comes in, the famous recharging trick. Mercedes has managed to optimize the hybrid system to a point where it can recover energy even in phases where other teams simply do not. While the rest manage the battery in a more linear way, the W17 uses charge and discharge microcycles that allow it to maintain a constant flow of energy throughout the lap. This does not directly break the regulations because the total energy is still within the allowed limits, but it does completely change the way in which that energy is used on the track. And this is where the situation becomes really delicate. Because the FIA is not only questioning whether or not Mercedes meets the final numbers, but whether the way in which it is achieving those numbers respects the spirit of the regulations. This nuance is fundamental, since it opens the door to interventions without the need to demonstrate direct illegality. It is enough to consider that the interpretation is too aggressive for changes or technical directives to be introduced that limit this type of solutions. Inside Mercedes, the feeling is one of contained calm, but outside, the pressure is growing rapidly. The rivals know that they cannot replicate something like this from one day to the next, and that generates enormous tension, because each race that passes with this advantage intact is a lost opportunity for the rest. And meanwhile, the FIA continues to collect information, cross-reference data, and try to understand exactly what the W17 is doing in each phase of the lap. In the middle of all this is George Russell, who is not only leading the track performance, but is also fully aware of the situation. Because it's one thing to have a competitive car, and quite another to know that that performance could be constantly reviewed. Russell is in a unique position. He enjoys the car's potential, but at the same time understands that that same potential is what is generating doubts, suspicions, and possible short-term consequences. But this is where everything starts to escalate. Because what at the beginning seemed like a simple technical advantage has now become a direct threat to the balance of the season. The FIA is no longer watching from a distance. It has started to actively intervene, and that completely changes the picture for Mercedes. After analyzing the data collected in the first races, especially those repetitive patterns of energy recovery and deployment, the Federation decided to take it a step further. It is no longer about checking whether the W17 meets the basic limits, but rather about understanding how it is meeting them. And that difference changes everything because it involves reviewing engine maps, internal configurations, and, above all, the logic with which the car manages each phase of the lap. The problem for Mercedes is that its advantage is not something isolated or easy to adjust. It is not a piece that can be removed or modified in a matter of hours. It is a complete operating philosophy based on energy efficiency, where each small detail is connected to the next. If the FIA decides to intervene with a technical directive, they would not only be limiting a part of the system, they would be forcing the team to redesign its way of competing. Meanwhile, in the paddock, the atmosphere has become increasingly tense. Rival teams are not waiting for a passive resolution, they are putting pressure. They know that they are at a disadvantage and that every race that passes with this system active is ground that Mercedes gains in the championship. And that generates a domino effect. Internal meetings, technical consultations, and even political movements within Formula One to accelerate a possible decision. Because here is something key that many are beginning to understand. This is not just about performance, it is about precedence. If Mercedes manages to maintain this system without restrictions, it would open the door to a new era where extreme energy management would be the dominant factor. And that would force all teams to rethink their projects from scratch. But the FIA is in a difficult position. On the one hand, it has not found a clear illegality, which means it cannot directly sanction. On the other hand, it is increasingly evident that Mercedes' interpretation is taken to the limit of the regulations. And when that happens, the solution is usually a technical directive that redefines the limits without the need to punish retroactively. This is where the uncertainty becomes total. Because a decision like this can come at any time. You don't need to wait for mid-season or a formal regulatory change. It can appear from one race to another and completely change the competitive order. Within Mercedes, this is experienced as a race against time. Every weekend is a chance to maximize the lead before something changes. And that is reflected in the way they are executing. Aggressive in strategy, precise in every detail, and aware that they cannot allow mistakes. And at the center of it all is still Russell. Because while the outside world questions the car, it has to continue delivering results. But now with an added factor. The pressure of knowing that he is not only competing against other drivers, but against a possible decision that could cut his performance without prior notice. Because if the history of this sport has shown anything, it is that when a team finds an advantage in that gray zone, the system sooner or later readjusts itself. And in this case, everything indicates that this readjustment will not be smooth. The investigation is already underway, the data is on the table, and the pressure from rivals continues to grow. This is not going to remain a simple warning. If the FIA decides to intervene with a clear technical directive, the impact on Mercedes could be immediate. That system that today allows them to optimize each phase of the return, that perfect balance between reloading and deployment, could suddenly be limited. And when we talk about a concept so integrated into the car, we are not talking about losing a few tenths. We are talking about completely changing the behavior of the W17. That means something even more important. Mercedes could go, in a matter of 1 or 2 races, from being the technical reference to having to adapt in real time. And in a season as tight as the current one, that kind of change is not easily recovered. But there is also the other scenario, the most disturbing for the rest, that the FIA does not find a clear way to limit this system without rewriting the regulations. If that happens, Mercedes would not only maintain its lead, but it would force all teams to move on. And that is where the true change of era would occur. A Formula One dominated by extreme energy management, where the software and the interpretation of the regulations outweigh the mechanics themselves. And in the middle of this possible turning point is George Russell. Because if the FIA acts, it will be one of the most directly affected. Their performance, their results, and their position in the championship depend largely on a system that could change overnight. But if he doesn't act, he could establish himself as the leader of a new stage in Formula One. What makes all of this even more tense is that there is no clear date, no definitive notice. The decision can come at any time. A statement, a directive, a technical clarification, and everything changes. So right now Mercedes is not only competing on the track, he is playing a much bigger game. A game against the regulations, against the interpretation of the FIA, and against time. Because they have created something extraordinary, but also something too visible to go unnoticed. And Formula One never leaves something like this unanswered. Not an illegal line, not an obvious trap, but that exact point where innovation becomes uncomfortable for the system. They have created a W17 that is not only fast, but redefines how energy is used within a lap. They have turned hybrid management into their greatest weapon, exploiting every crack in the rules with a precision that very few teams have achieved in recent history. But that very achievement is now its greatest threat. Because when you stand out too much in a gray area, you become the target. And that is exactly what is happening. The FIA is already in the game, the rivals are putting pressure, and the room for maneuver is reduced race after race. Mercedes is winning, but under constant observation. And this is where this story becomes really fascinating. If the FIA decides to act, we could be on the verge of a radical change to the season. A technical adjustment that would not only affect Mercedes, but would completely rearrange the grille. But if he doesn't, then we will be seeing the birth of a new way to dominate Formula One. One where it is not the one who has the most power that wins, but the one who best understands when to use it. And in the midst of all this, a very clear feeling remains. Mercedes has not only built a competitive car, it has built a problem for the entire category. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.